Well, good afternoon and welcome to our final SHAC meeting of the year. This is May 4th, and we will be looking at a couple of items today. At this time, Mr. Ivy has a presentation for us on the human sexuality curriculum resources.
Okay, so just want to start with some review, and then we'll start working through a process. So I'm going to do the review first, and then if we have anyone in the audience that would like to say anything publicly to the SHAC, we'll give that opportunity, and then we'll go back to continuing through this. So just some reminders. We talked about the process of human sexuality requirements last week. We talked about the policy. We talked about the resolution that was passed, 2 SHAC meetings that have to be held to review the human sexuality curriculum, board votes on recommendation that's made by the SHAC. And then at the end of the day, though, we shouldn't forget that parents always will have the option to opt in to human sexuality instruction. So we talked last week that opt-in is different than opt-out. When we send a letter home as an opt-out letter to parents, basically we have to get something back from the parent that says, I don't want my child to participate. And opt-in means if we don't get something back from the parent telling us that they can, the assumption is that they can't, that the student can't participate in that instruction. So it's a little bit different, and the parental right there stands throughout this, as long as we have human sexuality curriculum in our schools. We talked last time about EHAA local being the driving policy that we are following through this process. We know that SHAC recommends curriculum materials that comply with instructional content within the law, suitable for subject and grade level for which materials are intended, and reviewed by subject level experts. Those experts, in our case, of course, the people that wrote these materials are experts in this subject, but then we also have our own staff that were involved in the vetting of our materials and that are reviewed. And we are hoping to recommend to the board May 23rd some human sexuality curriculum materials. Remember, abstinence is key. That we are stressing that more than any other behavior. So we see that in the first 3 or 4 requirements that abstinence is being mentioned as the only effective method to prevent HIV, AIDS, pregnancy, and other STDs. We're devoting more time to it. It's the preferred choice of behaviors for unmarried persons that are in school. Abstinence before marriage. And then the last one, we talked last time about contraception and human use at reality rates, which basically means in the lab, theoretically, things work one way. When they're actually put into practice with real human beings, there are failures sometimes in those processes, either by inconsistency or misuse of contraception, which would definitely make the reliability of that. So at this point, what I'll do is kind of send you guys off with some tasks to review materials. As we get into that process, I'd like to offer an opportunity for anybody in the audience to say anything to the group that they would like. I don't believe we have anybody that is wanting to do that today. So I thought we could go through kind of in this order. So Procter & Gamble, the boy film, girl film, go through the Scott and White stuff. And then there was one brand called Common Sense that was a resource on sexting for grades 7 and 8. And then Goodhart Wilcox, we'll get into that last. So I guess first thing would be, do we, as a group, we reviewed boy film, girl film, 4th and 5th grades. I guess, what were your impressions? Were there any questions or concerns? So open the floor to you guys.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty straightforward. I like the idea that they kept reinforcing if they have questions to go ask specific people. I didn't think that there was anything abstract in that. I didn't feel like there was anything.
No, it uses clear language, easy
Yeah.
to understand. material's not too cheesy, that they're gonna be focused on that as opposed to focusing on what it's actually showing. I thought it was to the point, and I mean, a lot of good information that they're not gonna get a lot of times from parents maybe, or they're gonna pick up from other kids, and so straight to the fact and good information.
I was a little concerned in the very beginning because I thought it looked a bit young for fourth and fifth grade, and I thought that might turn them off, but then it jumped right into very pertinent information that they might not ask without some prompting, and so I thought that was
I agree.
very appropriate.
I thought it was interesting that there were boys and girls at first. And so, but it did separate out, gender appropriate or what, So,
And I'll be honest, I was watching this in the kitchen while I was, preparing for dinner, and my girls are much older, but my son is still in 8th grade. And when I watched the boy video, I thought to myself, I sure as hell am so glad that they're teaching this, and I don't have to come in the kitchen right now. I'll be like, questions? Do you have any questions? That is on the writing board right now. You can say all about it. But yeah, I'm very much so. Even as a nurse, I was still very happy to know that I wasn't gonna have to do this. But I mean, I'm willing to, I'm just like, thank God it's only questions. I don't have to say all of this.
But there were answers too.
Yeah.
And it was easing. It was, you're not weird or creepy. Or
Right.
These things happen, and it's okay to say,
Normal changes.
yes, this is happening to me.
Okay, those are all great comments and evidence that you all watched the videos. Thank you. Let me ask you, or just remind you, that with these videos, they're shown twice. So they'll be shown in 4th grade and again in 5th grade. Our typical time of the year is kind of almost this time of the year, right? Ms. Jihadi, around this time anyway. And the boys are separated and have just boys in the room, and the girls are just girls. We don't mix gender in those settings. So before we move on to the next level of discussion, is there anything else that anybody like to say? I guess, just any concerns. I didn't hear anybody say any concerns about anything except the one, and then it was made up for after watching a little bit further into the video. Didn't hear any concerns. Just wanted to clarify anything that anybody was worried about.
Concerns in regards to
The content being grade level appropriate, grade level appropriate, and that it's nothing that would, I guess, standards of our community that we would be, feel like it's representative of the standards of our community.
about just the videos.
About just the videos.
Okay.
one thing I might suggest or wonder how we handle it. I wondered if whoever's going to show the videos could possibly watch them together on the campus and discuss how they're going to respond to questions.
Right, that's a good idea.
Because I feel like that's what's different probably at every campus.
Sure.
And I think we don't know how to respond. We have an idea of how to respond.
So just to standardize, yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think as we go through time, people change and different context of where we're coming from. So I think that's a really good suggestion.
No man wants to show this film, I promise.
Yeah.
They'll go, do I have to? So, nobody wants to show the boys this film. So I think that you just got to decide, okay, who's going to do it? And let's talk about how we're going to respond to questions. And the girls too. But I know there's not as many men around the elementary campuses. So.
Okay, good suggestion. Somebody write that down. Okay, then we move into Scott and White supplementary materials, 6th grade through high school. And that was the one where we had the, pull that up just so we can have a reference. That was the one where we had these resources that you were able to go into. And so let's just kind of go one by one. And I can pull up the resource as we go, just to give you a visual of what we're talking about. But this was, we're in 6th grade right now. And this was the one that, let's see what that was called. Pregnancy Health is what that title was. And so we have that one. Just going to scroll slowly. And then parental responsibilities. And sexting. And so these, again, are from Scott and White. These were previously approved by the SHAC and the Board of Trustees years ago. And these are supplementary because these are some things that our teaching staff who are in charge of delivering this instruction. We're saying, you know, hey, we really would like to continue to have these resources available to us in addition to everything else that is within that textbook. So any concerns or questions or thoughts or comments on that on those 6th grade materials?
Again, I think it's really good information, straight to the point, straight to the facts that, you know, especially with the section that, hey, this is illegal, these are the consequences. And kind of the same thing with the pregnancy health and responsibilities as well. As, you know, if you do make this decision, these are what's going to happen, you know, long term, and you know, the consequences of your actions down the road. So it's you can't show the movie Kids, then you know this is the maybe the slap in the face of the reality check that you know, again with that preaching of abstinence as well to hit home.
Pretty frank conversations that need to be had.
I like that it covers the definitions. It really you really have the understanding of what in this curriculum, what each just development, just human development. And that's what you're, like 5th grade, I feel like they're really covering the definitions of what human development is. I have questions about younger grades when we were reviewing that. I'm sure we'll get there though, huh?
Well, the younger grades, elementary level, is just the boy phone, girl phone. That's all the younger grades get.
So then my question to you is this: do we cover empowering our students elementary age in understanding good touch, bad touch, and giving them the empowerment? In the older grades, it really talks about saying no and precautions like that. But is it covered somewhere else that isn't health class related to empower them for getting help, you know, decreasing their risks of abuse? Because we know child on child is just as important for us to explain to kids as it is adult on child. So my question is, are we empowering the elementary schools regarding good touch, bad touch, and it's not in the health education curriculum?
Yes. I think I understand your question. So
Yeah.
you're asking, beyond our adopted health curriculum, or what we're taking to the board to be adopted, how are we covering those piece that are about self-advocacy?
Yes.
And good touch, bad touch?
Yes.
It is not in the curriculum,
Right.
for K-5, but we, in talking with principals and Ms. Jones, it's a former principal in our district, our counselors go in and talk about that starting in kindergarten. And so we do have teams that are specific to that, and you see they kind of build.
Yeah.
And in the past, our counselors have done that. Moving forward, since we do have boutiques, the principals and I have talked about getting together and looking at that teak strand again and making sure that we have the resources through our counseling department on being consistent across the district and every elementary school. How we're gonna do that. We haven't had that meeting yet, but it's in the planning phase.
But it's on your, it's in the forefront of your mind. I think that's where I was, when I'm looking at this information, it really gives them, it's a good, concise way bringing the information to the kids, understanding the definitions. There are even getting into the middle school times, you're even in understanding, respecting yourself, respecting others, that healthy relationship, all of that. But that's not even covered right earlier. I just want to be sure that we're protecting our kids.
Absolutely.
So I didn't know, I mean, obviously it may not fall in health education, but if we're changing any curriculum, I don't want that piece to fall off that we're not doing it.
Right, no, it's very important that we have that, students need to be able to be self-advocate.
Yes.
And that happens to the counseling part,
Got
going in classroom guidance.
Good, that's all I wanted to, that answers my question, thank you.
And then I'll add one thing that new law regarding the type of construction you were just asking about. So I kind of term that as anti-victimization, big umbrella, and then just, and you can expect in the fall, I would hope by next fall that we'll ask the SHAC to review those creative materials as well, because that has become also required that the SHAC approve those types of materials. So I think we still have some work to do to try to, again, standardize it across the district and allow the SHAC the opportunity to review those materials. Because although you think of human sexuality as one bucket and anti-victimization as another, there are some overlapping in it because sexual abuse happens, and I equip our students to not be a victim of that. But thank you for that question. Anything else on the 6th grade resources? Okay, I'm going to move over to the 7th and 8th grade supplemental resources. Again, we just have two areas here. We have sexting, and this is where we're using a different material. It's commonsense.org, I guess. I can't really read that, but this is again, it's a resource for sexting. And then we have sex and the law. So any thoughts or questions or concerns about the 7th and 8th grade supplementary materials?
And this is taught in health class or PE or athletics? What about those kids who are not taking health, PE, or athletics in 8th grade?
Everyone is taking either athletics or PE.
Not everyone. My son doesn't take any of it.
They have to get a PE in middle school.
Yeah,
So that.
so
then
if they don't take athletics in 8th grade, where do they get it again?
If they're not in athletics and PE in 8th grade and they're not in health, they don't get it until they're a biology student. So that might be something.
How do we change that?
But they are getting it in 6th grade and 7th grade.
Everyone gets it in 6th grade. The only people in 7th grade are students who are taking a health course.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's my only concern, is that having worked at the high school and had girls come over from the 8th grade already pregnant, do they hear this again in 8th grade if they don't have those classes?
Yeah, we can make sure that they do. We really find out who those kids are from the system.
Surely there's just a handful of them, but it's bound to happen because it's happening at our house.
We can make sure that
Okay.
it's easy to pull that list, that
Yeah.
roster.
Okay, thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't realize it.
All right, and then high school supplemental resources. We have parenting as a teen, teens, sex and the law, and then contraception. So I think these are kind of repeats from previous grade levels. I think contraception is the one that is new. But again, and Heather, biology students are what grade or what age?
Either 9th or 10th grade.
9th or 10th grade. Okay. So 15 or 16, 14, 15, 16. So let's hear some comments on that. While you're thinking about what you're going to say, I will remind the group that this is when we get into this unit of study, that this is the part where we're stressing abstinence more than anything else. And so we have to really honestly have to track that. How much time are we spending on contraception, and how much time are we spending on abstinence as being the preferred method of birth control, STD prevention?
I want to say something. Okay, just only because I was at the high school and that was my worst fear is when these girls came in to talk to me about being pregnant. And my concern then was that as much as we do a very good job in teaching abstinence, that because the only surefire way to not get pregnant is to not have sex. We know that is absolute. I think my question is, I did not find this, so my answer might be in that one, because I did not find that T right there. I did go into this one. But my question is, maybe it's only a handful of girls who came to my office who didn't understand how pregnancy worked, but they truly didn't understand the whole process. And I asked very specific questions and they didn't get it. They don't know how they got pregnant. And that bothers me. So you are gonna have, I agree that in Kerrville, we should be consistently saying abstinence, abstinence, abstinence. I see that we say that contraceptions are a good barrier prevention for STDs. Do we say that a barrier protection is a way to prevent pregnancy?
Well, I'm just kind of scrolling through. I guess number one would be, does the student understand the concept of what contraception is? And there's the term that birth control method.
It's not 100%.
Yeah,
And
so I think
we should say that for sure.
Birth control pills. And I think the good thing about this is it tells you, this can get you, this can help you not get pregnant, but it does not protect you from STDs.
Okay.
Birth control injections, I think that's in the same category as pills. Birth control implant, again, does not protect from STDs. We're not using emergency contraception as a point of instruction. And uterine devices, again, it's a birth control. It does not protect from STDs. Spermicide is a birth control. It's not protection. And so I think, and I guess I wonder if, and when you have a student that comes in that doesn't understand how they got pregnant.
Are you asking specifically the act of sex itself? They don't understand how that actually occurred. Like, I don't think they understand.
I'm telling you.
I will full well agree with you on that.
I'm telling you.
They need education on the act of sex itself, how it happens and what occurs.
And
Because people don't understand anatomy, they don't understand that they don't understand.
I don't think that as a school district, that's our responsibility to teach them that. We as parents should be teaching that. But
What do you do for the students?
exactly, there are those kids who don't. So I think my question is that the end of that page there?
We go down to condoms
Okay, that's,
and then abstinence. There's a
so
whole lot.
can you go back up to condoms real quickly and then tell me, let me just read that last section summary. the risk of pregnancy. Okay, so it is there. It's there, it's right there. Like it's right there. Okay, and, okay, no, you have it right there. That has answered my question. But yeah, ultimately, they didn't understand
How that,
the difference in how that actually happened. And specifically what the male body does and what the female body does and how,
it's likely more of an issue for the female understanding. than the male understanding, but, so,
yes.
and those are hard conversations to
Very.
have, and they are difficult to explain, but there are plenty of people who are adults.
Right.
So I don't know how you have that conversation in school at all.
Sure, I mean, I think the sixth grade video does a good job scientifically
Yeah.
telling you how it happens. But for, I guess, maybe the actual physical act of what you're asking, no, I mean, it doesn't talk about that. But if it talks about, the implantation of the egg, so forth, that, I mean, it's covered in, at least in that bit.
Yeah, in the sixth grade video. And I liked, that they actually discuss nocturnal emissions and whatever, that the kids get that, but the girls don't. The girls don't watch that. So then when you get to high school and you think they have an understanding and they find themselves in a position where they are having sex, they don't understand that's how they get pregnant. And it may only be the ones that I talked to, and the rest of them are great, but there are a few. So I think that's my concern, and I don't want us to fall through the cracks. I know that some of us it's going to happen, but just so you'll know that, I don't know that there's anything we can do about it, but know that that is a concern of mine.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good concern to have.
Yeah, that's maybe that. I know that, resources. That's in general. That's still, but maybe the students don't understand what that means.
Right.
The actual. Yeah, I'm still trying to take notes and figure out.
Yeah, we're recording, so as a nurse, I would just say this. Specifically, on more than one occasion, I had a little, I call them little, but they're not. They were 16, 17-year-old kids come into my office. They are pregnant. They don't understand how they got pregnant. Or they think they are pregnant, want to take the test. And I have to ask, when was your last sexual encounter? What do you mean by that? Did you have a sexual encounter where the potential of ejaculation happened? What is that? That was the exact, that's what, and I said, then I had to rephrase it in Urban Dictionary type questioning, and then she understood. And so then she was like, oh yeah, that happened. I said, do you realize that's how you get pregnant? That's how you can get pregnant. That's how you can get STDs. And she said, nah, miss, no. And I'm like, crap. So that's where I'm like, well, how do we miss that? Because you are teaching them all about the developmental phases of what their bodies are doing. You can't teach them about what the male reproduction is doing until high school, in my opinion, because I just don't think they're gonna listen to that. That will never happen. But at the same time, like I said, I know it was only 2 instances in the 5 years I was there, but 2 wasn't the only 2 pregnancies I had at the high school. And they literally had no idea that's how they could get pregnant.
And I know that we do have materials, and I need to find them out and find a little bit what sex is, but I don't know, I need to find that.
But is that what we're, I mean,
Well, here's
bring us to a place where
So
you
in the middle
can't teach
school,
that.
we're about to get to the middle school book, but basically when you look in here, I mean, it does use the term, so there's a section called the male reproductive system. It talks about all the processes, and it talks about sperm that will, and it talks about ejaculation, okay? And then it talks about the female reproductive system and talks about the different important parts. And then it gets into the human sexual reproduction. And it goes, basically semen has to enter the vagina, go to the fallopian tubes. So of course, at that point, the question mark is, well, how does that happen?
Right,
So where I think we're kind of like in a school setting,
can't,
I don't know that we can go there,
Exactly.
and so I don't know, I think this is an inherent problem.
right,
We take it all the way to a point, and then there's a gap that if the discerning student isn't putting it all together.
or
Yeah.
asking parents the right questions.
And so I think that's one of those things is
Yeah.
we try really hard to be everything to everybody, but there's sometimes you just can't be.
And that's exactly what I was trying to say. Maybe it was just a fluke couple of kids, but just no, I guess I'm just saying it happens.
But even the curriculum that you're talking about, we already determined that the kids who take health in 7th grade are exposed to that curriculum. And the kids who are in athletics in 8th grade are exposed to that curriculum, I'm assuming. Most kids in junior high who take PE take it in the 7th grade. They don't take PE in the 8th grade. They have to have, by state standards, 1 year of PE in 7th or 8th grade. And so they're not getting that. They're skipping that. They're going straight from the 6th grade health video to whatever they get in biology in the 10th grade. And typically by then is when we've lost them.
And I think what I'm hearing, and just again, hearing is that we really need to look at our 6th through 8th grade and who's getting it and when are they getting
Yes.
it? Because that's, 6th grade is, I think, is an appropriate time, just for good information to understand. But then and unfortunately, we have, I hope we don't have very many 6th graders who are sexually active, but I know that 7th and 8th grade, that starts, that ends, and that's really a time that they, so I think what I'm hearing is that beyond, so, we are talking about instructional materials today, but I think what I'm hearing the committee say is that we really need to look at when these instructional materials are delivered in those middle school years.
Yes,
And making sure we're covering all the spaces.
I think you're hearing us.
Right. Good for me, and good for y'all for saying so. Okay, now, let's see if we can pull. Okay, so that was the high school. And so good conversation as far as the instructional materials from Scott and White. Good conversation, but let's go back to the materials themselves. Is there anything in those materials that you were had concerns about, thoughts about?
I think material was good. It was, I guess maybe I missed last week or whatever like that. Was there a reason that the emergency contraceptive was nixed? I give it both ways, and my feelings kind of go both ways on it. You don't want to promote something that.
I'll let Heather answer that.
In meeting with the lead biology teacher, she just said that she didn't feel like it really matches the views of our community.
Sure.
And did not even want to expose and have that discussion.
Gotcha. And I completely understand that and get behind that as well. My play devil's advocate with it is you do have somebody who makes the choice, and wouldn't you want them educated on, a possibility that's out there, but I can understand where.
Okay, and then the last part, so I saved the one for last that I was a little, I want to tell you that I discovered something this morning, and I hope that it's not a big problem, it's just a little problem, but let's talk about it. Okay, I need to, okay, so Goodhart Wilcox, what I realized this morning is as I was looking through the online materials, if you look at the textbook itself, the chapters on that we're really asking y'all to review were not,
Don't line up. and
they're
then
not lining
there.
up and they're not there.
Yes.
Okay, so you're not the only one that happened to you.
Okay, good.
So what we learned this morning, and so Heather's been on the phone with the publisher, is that the state Board of Education, remember, they're the ones that approve instructional materials. Most of the time they give school districts more than one instructional material to look at. In this case, the only instructional material that the state board approved was Goodhart Wilcox. And so one of the requirements that the state, this is what we're learning today, and I wish we would have done this last week, but one of the requirements was that the chapters that had anything to do with human sexuality were pulled out of the book itself and is kind of put to the side. The reason they're doing that, I would suspect, is that they know in reality that whether it's an online textbook or a paper textbook, that students are going to have access to that. And so if we're going through all the work that we're going through to approve specific human sexuality curriculum, remember when we started the conversation, I said there may be elements of this that we're going to say, no, we're not going to do that. Yes, we are going to do that. But if we give a book to a kid and say, here's your book, then, and they have access to everything, then we really, why have we gone through all this trouble to talk about it when at the end of the day, we're giving the kid a book or an online resource that has everything there that they can possibly see. So that's the rationale that I'm sure they use to pull these out. So what I really need to ask you, did anybody find or realize, and the answer is probably no. Some of you probably, you found it, just raise your hand if you found it and realized that's what you were looking at. Okay, good job.
I did not.
Okay, so,
Well, I knew something was missing, so
Yeah.
it was blanks.
yeah.
Yeah.
get it out. And so when you click on that one, then you get into some of these ideas and making sure this is really, I've not looked at this a whole lot, but I think if we scroll down, Heather, am I in the right place? Companion website, yep. This is the middle school. And I think if we scroll down.
You have to go all the way to unit 7 though.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff in here that's not necessarily human sexuality related, but then when you get down to chapter
17.
17,
Yeah.
scroll.
It's not, because I didn't find it there either.
Yeah, okay, so human development, so,
I matched the
Mhm.
the words, I matched the words and found it.
The rep said they made changes from the actual textbook. And I didn't realize this until I talked to them today. And then the online resources. And online resources are finalized, finished them. Textbook is almost like a beta version as far as the order. And so I think that's why they're not looking. And I'm sorry, I did not know that before. About 11:30 today.
so we really, at this point, I guess, considering, and I'm looking at this and not really seeing what I'm wanting to see. Because child development is not human sexuality, human development probably is.
It talks about.
Well, there's a whole other section, you're not even seeing because it's a human development is there, child development, adolescent, puberty, adult and aging. But then chapter 18 was the sexually transmitted diseases and infections.
And you're in middle school
That's,
and she's reading on her eighth grade.
Sixth grade.
oh yeah, that's 6.
So the thing is that I think we need to know, we need some more information, and really, nobody, whether it's the SHAC committee members or council members or our community, has had the opportunity to review the Goodhart Wilcox material. And so kind of at this point, what I wish is that we had known about this sooner and could have given you guys this information. But what has happened is that we didn't know that and we don't have it for you. And so we really have to kind of stop here And we're not going to be able to approve make any kind of recommendations to the board today. So let's talk about how we can move forward.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
If we recommend this, do we have to recommend it in its entirety?
No.
Okay.
I would-
The e-flashcards, I'm not sure I just looked briefly at some of them and they had words, but no, I couldn't get in to figure out, and I didn't spend enough time to say that I did this thoroughly, but I would see the word, but then it didn't have the definition. That just popped right up and said, hey, this is it.
Yeah, and I think that's a functional kind of, how is it functioning issue, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And so I think, we'll stay focused on when we can get the right access and get access to everything and push that out to you guys. Again, we'll be focusing on the instructional materials for human sexuality, and really going to be just an assessment again. Is it grade level appropriate? Is it matching the norms in our community, expectations of our community? And so for now, we're going to have to do a little work. I'm hoping by the end of the day today, we can have some specific information and update the website, update the PDF form that has links, and be able to get that back to you guys so that back to the community, so that we can actually complete the process that we've started. So I'm assuming, sure, we have everybody's email address. And Mrs. Bain, if you wanted to leave your email address as well, then that email will go out to you. So that, I'm glad you're here, and if there's anybody else in the community that knows you're here and counting on you to bring information back, I want you to have that information as well to share. So then the next question is, this is where I'm a little nervous to ask this question, but could we have another meeting this time, same time next week on Wednesday, and finish this up? It should be a shorter meeting, it should be a pretty fast kind of a deal.
It's your job.
And if it can't be next week, it could be our next the board meeting that we're trying to hit is May 23rd. So if not next week, then May 18th would be our next opportunity. And it wouldn't be, I don't believe, too late. It would not be too late if we got and we really need everybody that's here today to come back.
I'm available.
You are
Yes.
on both days or one of the days?
Oh, wait, well, it's the second day.
18th.
The 11th. I mean,
Yeah, it's either the 11th or the 18th. We need you.
Can't get out of this.
Okay, yes, I can be available both days.
Okay, so let's just do a raise of hands. Let's start with the 11th. Raise your hand if you're available the 11th. Okay, I'm Cheryl, it can be difficult for you. And when you say difficult, does that mean impossible, or does that mean I have to move some things around?
I have to figure out if I'm going to be in San Antonio at a director's meeting, or I'm going to be covering spare testing in the morning.
Okay. Start testing on the 11th.
And I appreciate it.
Okay, then raise your hand if you're available on the 18th. And then,
I'm on shift that day. If we do the Zoom,
okay,
I can be sure to clear that
all
out.
right, we'll see. I think we might be able to pull that off and invite you to participate by Zoom. So I saw everybody on the 18th. So we'll say that our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 18th. Cheryl will send out, and that'll also give us a little more time with the instructional materials.
Yeah.
Make sure that we're not, because what I would hate to have happen is like, oh, finally we get it figured out on Monday, we have 2 days.
So are you asking for both dates? Or just the 18th?
Just the 18th.
And I think the meeting probably would be 12:15, or he said it's difficult to get here by 12. So, 12:15, okay with everybody?
12:15?
Okay, so it'll be 12/15, May 18th in this room.
One, I can send that, or you can draw that. I'll just send that a calendar invite. And you can delete one of them.
Okay. I thank you for that and apologize again that we didn't know this sooner. But we are going to stay true to our process for sure. Okay, so the other topic, and I'm gonna not intending to spend a lot of time on this, but just something that I wanted you guys to hear a little bit about and provide some input on. Learn when I learn. See now, which passes out. Okay, so want to talk a little bit about bullying and some efforts that the district is taking, and then run something by you, just get your input on this. This will be 15 minutes tops. So before. Okay, so this year, if you're an educator, you know this. If you're a parent, you may suspect it. If you are a consumer, if you're neither of those things, but a consumer of the news, you've probably heard this. But we have really seen this school year kind of what I'm calling an emotional and behavioral regression. So students who are basically acting in ways that are not normal for their age level of maturity, social and behavioral maturity. And some things that I think we can attribute that to is just trauma, loss, and grief. I think that was an issue for our students before the pandemic, during and after, or if we are in the after stages of the pandemic, which I think we are. There's been trauma, loss, and grief in that as well. This year, we know we had parents and grandparents of our students that were passing away, and more than what we've seen before. And then I think economic instability, we're living in some hard times economically. During the pandemic, it was due to some levels of unemployment. Now I think we can look at inflation, house prices, and things getting more expensive, and cost of rent, things like that. So that definitely causes pressure. And then there's just societal pressures. And I think I put social media first because I really think that is a huge factor. All the social media platforms that our students are in right now, so many of them are just really inappropriate and really show some very negative behaviors. I think there's just division within our country, and there's also isolation. I think that as we get more into our phones and into our computers, that's isolating us socially as adults and as children as well. And so what we're seeing is an increase in negative social behaviors at school and online. And part of how that's manifested itself has been in just mean behaviors and bullying behaviors of our students. And so what we're working on right now as a district is a few things. Number one is awareness. We really want to make sure that our kids and our families and our teachers are understanding and defining bullying. We can also define mean behaviors. There is a difference. Bullying and mean behaviors, both are unacceptable, both are inappropriate, but bullying, there's a separate definition to that. We're making a statement that it's not acceptable to do these things at school or online, and we're informing our students, staff, and parents, and working to start those informative strategies about the responsibility to report if you're a school staff member, and how to report if you're any of those other people, whether you're staff or a student or a parent, how to report those things. So awareness, really important. Prevention, we have always engaged in prevention activities. Some of the high level kind of things we do, guidance lessons that are provided by counselors, especially at the elementary age. We have counselors going into classrooms to do whole class instruction, and bullying prevention and being kind are always a topic of conversation. And that happens also day to day in classrooms, on playgrounds, and gymnasiums and things like that. At our secondary levels, we see more grade level class meetings. We also have counseling staff that can address these kinds of issues, probably more pinpoint on finding the people that are engaged or victims of and working with those kids. We have conflict resolution and mediation techniques across the district. Character counts is still strong in Kerrville ISD, and taught to our kids the 6 pillars of character. And one of those again is kindness, be kind, and how to treat others like you want to be treated, really golden rule kind of stuff. And part of the response strategy that we've had is back in January, we had 2 trainings for all of our district administrators put on by the Wash Gallegos law firm. They're a large law firm that represents school districts across the state of Texas, and I think here in Mexico as well. But we had 2 nights, 3 hours each training of how to conduct a sound investigation and document your efforts. And then also the laws, policies, and responsibilities of the school district and school administrators when investigating a bullying allegation. We're in the process of updating our district documentation procedures and forms, and all this. A lot of this is driven by what's in law. What are we supposed to be doing by law? And so we're really just bolstering these things, and we kind of saw this as an issue during the fall semester. It's like we really have to be making sure that we're equipped to take these situations seriously and take steps to end these situations. And then finally, just reviewing responsibilities of our teachers and staff to report suspected bullying. So those are the things that we've done just since the beginning of January. We still have work to do. But one of the things that I wanted to share with the group now, Lauren, is we've got some informational posters. I guess these are 8.5 by 11 right now, but we're going to turn these into posters. But just wanted you guys to give you all an opportunity to look at it. And remember the point of these flyers, the point of these posters is to boost awareness and give teachers, staff, and students information that they need to know to report and to help to prevent some of these things. So let's look at the side the side that has the bullying with the red cross around it or through it, and just we're trying to keep it simple and visual. These are posters that can be hung in hallways, classrooms, just around common areas of their schools. Take a minute and tell me what you think. We're getting close. There's a little X through the QR code. Those QR codes are not active yet. That's why we put X through it for now, so we wouldn't try to scan it. But when they are live, it's going to take us to a part of our website that's going to be focused on bullying prevention and response.
Will it be able to be reported through the QR code?
Well, I mean, so no, but we do have a reporting tool called P3, and P3, and we may want to throw P3 on there somewhere on this link to it. But you can access it through your phone or on a desktop computer or laptop or smart device. But also, P3 is great, and it gives us a lot of information. But we also, I think, want to really just encourage people to just go talk to a teacher, go talk to an administrator. P3 is kind of to me, it's a catch-all for those who don't feel comfortable coming forward in person. But really, and I'll tell you this group that it's a lot easier for the school administrators to work through a problem if they have the real person sitting in front of them saying this is what happened, and being able to. You can't communicate back and forth through the app, but sometimes some kids understand what's happening when they see that message come up, and sometimes they may get spooked, and it's like, oh, somebody's really going to talk to me. I don't want to do that. And sometimes they'll get some dialogue on that. It just depends on the student, and parents get it. Depends on the reporter. And then the other side, the bullying is wrong. That page there, really that's an attempt to really define what is bullying. And some key elements there is that there's an imbalance of power that's being exercised. So just for this group, an imbalance of power could be something very obvious like size. It could be something like the number. So 3 of you are taunting me. That's an imbalance of power. There's 3 of you. An imbalance of power might be intellectual. So there's an intellectual difference between the victim and perpetrators or perpetrator. It might be a social situation where there's ostracization, or let's not talk to her because we don't like her anymore. If you like her, then you can't be our friends. So that kind of stuff that can be happening. There's also just cyberbullying. That's when the same kinds of behaviors are taking place digitally. But we're trying to not, and again, we're not making an effort to say, oh, that's not bullying, we can't do anything about it. That's not the point. But we do need to differentiate it because there's very specific laws and policies that tell us when it's bullying, you have to do this. And so to know what we have to do, we have to first determine, is this a bullying incident or is this somebody being mean and inappropriate? Again, both can be dealt with, both can result in disciplinary consequences or stay away agreements or any other number of intervention. But when we define it as bullying, it's kind of like, if you check, yes, it's bullying, and there's this whole other thing that we have to do. Those things include notifications to the parents. So you as a parent may not know that your child is being bullied, but if your child says that they are, and we find it to be true, or if it's reported by a staff member or another student, find that to be true, then within 3 days, we have to call that parent and say, hey, we need to let you know your child is bullied. And why is that? Well, because we know that bullied kids can have a myriad of problems up to and including self-harm. And so parents need to know that that's happening to their student.
So what's this law? What is it, a specific law?
It's probably, it's a specific policy, and it's, I cannot remember the policy code right now, FFI, thank you so much, Lauren. We talked about it an hour ago, so that's why I was looking at her. FFI, policy FFI. So there's local and legal FFI, and legal is really just kind of what the law says, and the local is how we apply that locally. So,
Okay,
but yeah, very specific, and I can't tell you the Texas Education Code.
yeah, no worries. But what you're saying is, if there's mean and inappropriate behaviors, you have to ensure, you have to really focus on, okay, is this mean or inappropriate versus bullying? Because if it's bullying, you have to act on it.
It triggers other requirements that are in state law. Where it's a means, so Karen, I could come up and pull your hair, and you could go tell on me, and I would get in trouble for that.
Yeah.
But if I pulled on your hair every day for the last 3 months, and you were scared to come around me because every time you came around me, I was kind of taunting you, then you become, it starts to disrupt your educational process. It starts to fearful that I'm going to do that to you. Then we're in bullying now, and we need to make sure your parents know that. We need to make sure my parents know that as well, which is another requirement of the law.
Yeah.
Is that, hey, your kid's being bullied, and here's how we know it. And because that kid needs intervention as well.
Sure, you don't want my mom to know.
No, I know. And I know better than to bully you too, so. So anyway, just wanted to share that, and I think any feedback on these flyers themselves, if your kid sees this, you see this, or you have any questions, or what about this, what about that? That's kind of what we're looking for right now.
And these will be general K through 12, you'll be using these.
I think that probably when we're in K, we're not going to be using this in kindergarten, first grade, but we are putting some of these visuals on there to try to prop some of that. We probably will need to work a little more for early childhood campuses and the kindergarten, first grade. This is a starting point. This is our, we have to do something, so this is where we're starting. I think third grade up to 12, probably a lot of second graders will see this and be okay with it. So second, third grade up to 12th grade is our target right now. We'll need to do some more work. We're just trying to get something.
Yeah, and in kinder and first grade, I don't know, I would almost tell you to go a little more positive. Be kind to your friends and make it that direction other than a negative bully connotation.
Okay, thank you. That's good. Okay, so that's just a quick overview, what we're working on, there's more to come, more to be done, but just wanted to let you have a shot at it before we about to hit send, hit save and send. So I think that we are finished with our agenda today, and all we need is a motion to adjourn, and then we go.
I will motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Send an invite for the 18th. Thank you.
Perfect.